Hello again, guys. It is I, 700, and we are back. This time with Ciaphas Cain, Chapter 1. Now, we're going to be reading this from the perspective of Cain from the future. And what he is going to be doing is he is going to be talking about his life. He's going to be talking about the events that led up to his moment as a hero. So, of course, there may be some unreliable narration. There may be also some infactual statements that he may make. He may also make some assumptions about people that aren't entirely true. But besides that, it's a pretty good book. It's a pretty good series. I think it's really funny and it's really hilarious to dive into it. So with that being said, we're going to just summarize through every chapter video by video, and we're going to go through all the Ciaphas Cain, starting with Fight or Flight. Now this starts off right off the bat on Desolatia 4. This is a desert world that has been purposed for the use of mining, and its population's pretty sizable. It doesn't give us an exact number, but it's a pretty sizable point where it is actually cramped. So there's a lot of people bustling through the streets. So we're looking at a few, 10,000, maybe more, maybe even 100,000 people. We don't really get a good view of the place. But to Ciaphas Cain, he calls it more of a tribe compared to the hive city he is from, the hive world he is from, my bad. And right off the bat, we can see that Commissar Cain is a little excited to begin his post. And he's got some trepidation as well, beginning it, because here's the thing. Ciaphas Cain's a bit of a scoundrel. He's a bit of a bastard. He's a bit of a cheat. What he did was he played a game of cards with someone from the Administratum, and of course he rigged the deck against the guy and won. And by winning the gamble, he was allowed to pick whatever posting he wanted. So, what does he pick? He picks an artillery regiment known as the Valhallan 12th Field Artillery on a faraway world known as Desolatia 4, where there's hopefully no incursions nearby. And the main reason for an artillery regiment is because Ciaphas Cain's a bit of a coward and doesn't want to be in the combat. You see, he actually wants to be as far away as possible from all the artillery, all the men shouting, all the blood and gore. So he chose this posting because he could see the incursion going on for a few years. After all, orcs are very tough individuals. It's very tough to weed the bastards out. So this sounds like a good post for a commissar. Sit around, do nothing, and then if they actually move to a different planet, God forbid, or God Emperor help them if they do move, then at least he's still in the safety of the artillery line, which is way the fuck away from the enemy. That's his logic at least. Does it play out that way? Well, we're about to dive right into that. Now, Ciaphas Cain is a relatively new commissar. He's only been a commissar for 8 weeks. 7 of those weeks was spent in transit to the planet, Desolatia 4. So he's very new, doesn't really know the ropes, doesn't really know much, but he's a very well-knowledge commissar, as all commissars are. After all, attending the Scala is a very prestigious achievement. Now, commissars are not well received and not well liked by many regiments, as Cain points out. He points out that being very zealous and being very authoritative tends to get you shot in the back more often than not by your own guys. So, when he arrives, he notices immediately that his welcome is not exactly welcoming. All he sees is one guy who's barely dressed in a uniform with a salamander vehicle right next to him. And this is, of course, noteworthy because, one, protocol demands that he be greeted a little bit more formally with, a few guys, not just one. And also, he should be greeted when guys are fully prepared in a uniform. But seems like Gunner Jurgen, who is the man attending to Ciaphas Cain, decided not to wear his full panoply of war gear. The main reason being is that the Valhallan regiments tend to wear trench coats. They tend to wear these massive coats that are meant for Arctic winters. And the problem is that they're on a desert world, and they're still wearing these damn coats. So they are sweating profusely, especially poor Gunner Jurgen. But before Ciaphas Cain can even approach Jurgen Jurgen hastily shuffles over and asks the commissar if he needs help with carrying his bags. Not a salute. Not welcome to Desolation 4. Nope. Nothing. Just immediately goes straight to the point. Can I carry your bags? And which Ciaphas Cain just says, nah, my bags aren't heavy. Lead the way. Because you see, Cain is kind of revolted by Jurgen. Jurgen's stench, his personal body odor, is so bad. Cain describes it as a personal living bubble shield, and that when he was greeted, he was expecting to be greeted by soldiers, not by a living bioweapon, which is a great way of describing Gunnar Jurgen. Now, Gunnar Jurgen's not really remarkable. Even Cain notes it, where their whole conversation heading to the Colonel Mostrow, the one who's in charge of the Imperial Guard Regiment, their whole conversation goes along something like this. Cain would just go, so, how's the fighting going? And to which Jurgen would just respond, as the Emperor wills it. It's going fine. Okay, well, how do you feel about this posting? It's the Emperor's will. Okay. Well, how do you feel about the artillery that we're using? Do you feel like it's too much? It's as the Emperor dictates. So Ciaphas Cain already analyzes and levels the fact that Jurgen's intelligence seems to just stay right there. He doesn't actually say much, do much. He just kind of shrugs his shoulders nonchalantly and just says, that's just probably the Emperor doing stuff. The laziness of being a theist. Isn't that right, guys? If something is meant to be, it's just God's view. It's just because God wills it. No need to analyze it, no need to think about it. That's Jurgen. This is where, of course, Cain is just kind of, I would say, unamused by his company. He was expecting a little bit more conversation than this, but there is some respect to be had for a guy so simple-minded. After all, that means that he can sneak off and do whatever he wants with this dumbass in tow, and this dumbass in tow wouldn't be smart enough to realize what is going on. This is, of course, something that Cain would exploit in future endeavors. Finally, Cain and Jurgen arrive at Colonel Mostrow's location, and Colonel Mostrow is, of course, sitting in a highly air-conditioned room, so air-conditioned, in fact, that when you talk, your breath is visible, because the Valhallans seem to enjoy the cold, so much so that they make the air conditioning as deadly cold as fucking possible, which Cain at this point thanks the God Emperor that the commissars have to wear a mandatory jacket, because this room was frigid. Now, the Colonel, on the other hand, is just wearing pretty much a tank top. He's not really much of anything. He finds this weather pretty damn comfortable. Upon which, though, the greeting that Cain gets from Colonel Mostrow is far from warm and far from welcoming. In fact, it's a lot like the room. It's very cold and frigid. He just immediately asks the commissar, what is he doing here? Why are you here? I've never needed a commissar before. What the fuck are you doing here? Upon which, Cain seems to relatively ease into the Colonel's side. He seems to have had some experience dealing with these types of guys before. He even notes in the book that when it comes to working with men like this, the best hope that a commissar can have is just to have a no ill will relationship, but understanding each other's presence kind of relationship. So it's kind of like a guy who marries someone's daughter. You're not ever going to be loved by the father, but if you can just make it where he just says you're okay, you're golden. That's the perfect relationship status to be with your father-in-law, is just to be okay. Not loved, not liked, not hated, but just okay. So Cain works his magic. He turns on the charm, turns on the flair, turns on a little bit of theatrics. And he tells the guy about how perfectly run his regiment is, about how the commissariat must have taken notice of how well run and well documented and well recorded the Valhallan artillery regiment has been. This is more or less him wooing the Colonel Mostrow, showing him that, one, the commissar is impressionable. This commissar, Ciaphas Cain, is just a normal Joe just like anyone else. He just happens to be wearing a uniform and has a title as a commissar. Cain even tells him a humble story about how he focused too much on a pitch ball I'm assuming it's type a baseball game, and not too much on the library, and that he scored fairly low on the finals. So already he's impressing the colonel, because the colonel's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He wants you to speak plainly and speak openly. He doesn't want you to be playing political games, playing political words with him, mentioning higher-ups. He doesn't play that shit. He just wants a very simple, straight answer from people, an honest answer. Cain has analyzed this guy down to a T. Because then he starts lying to him. And he lies to him saying about how scoring so low in the finals, the commissars up high have decided to ease Cain into service. In what better way to ease a commissar than to assign him to a unit that almost doesn't need one? A unit that's so well run, it should be easy for a commissar to even integrate himself. This, of course, flattered the colonel extremely. Colonel almost starts blushing in this frigid-ass room. And he welcomes Cain and says, okay, well, we'll do the best to keep you underemployed. And after that, Cain goes about his duties boosting morale. You see, the whole thing for Colonel Mostrow is that he views the commissar as totally unnecessary, and he is absolutely right. His regiment's fine, they don't need it. What he doesn't know is that Cain's a bit of a coward and purposely chose this. That he does not know. But seeing as how Cain has wooed him so much, he doesn't seem to pay any more questions, any more mind to anything around him. So, setting about maintaining order in the ranks, establishing high morale and discipline in the regiment, Cain is pretty much just giving people kitchen duty, giving people cleanup chores, and that's it. This is, of course, very surprising, but at the same time, Cain rationalizes this very well. See, the people that he's dealing with are people who are walking around naked, people who are walking around with little to no identification, so we don't know who the fuck these soldiers are, essentially. And this is a very serious issue, because if you're not wearing your uniform, you don't have your identification on you, who the fuck are you in this artillery line? You need to get the fuck out if you're a civilian, which is also, punishable by death as possible infiltration of the lines. But Cain's being remarkably relaxed about this. He's just giving people light duty, giving people very minimal tasks to perform. This is, of course, some that one private, Gunner Erlison, talks about, where he says, I wasn't expecting this out of a commissar. But Cain rationalizes it saying, right now the heat is hard to cope with for the guys. And they have to stand out there day and night, shelling away, firing these hot-ass Earthshaker rounds at the enemy position. They need some slack. And upon which, he also points out in his head, not to the gunner in question, but in his head, he just notes about how commissars who are well-loved and lenient are as rare as orc ballerinas. And a commissar who is loved by his unit tends to be more or less protected in a shootout should the worst come to worse. Whereas other commissars, well, they just happen to die mysteriously when the enemy was far away from combat. So, he's kind of already established himself as a very approachable person, a very nice commissar, a very fair commissar indeed. All he does is tell people, put on your uniform, keep your papers on you, and you're going to have to spend 5 days in the kitchen cooking. You're going to have to spend 5 days on maintenance duty. That's about it. It's like, fuck, that sucks. Kitchen duty, cleaning up the fucking mess. But at least this commissar didn't blow my fucking brains out. So, it's alright. Something that's actually very good about this, and I really love that Cain points this out, is that ever since he's been here, the noise of the artillery Earthshaker rounds pummeling the ground, just pummeling every time they fire, was at first startling to him. But after a month of being on deployment here, he pretty much ignores it entirely. It's just normal. This is what I would say the normalization of deviancy, where something isn't normal, but it happens so frequently that it becomes normal. Now he's no longer on high alert every time he hears that boom. Never is he on high alert when he hears that. He's not on high alert anymore when he hears this. So, after exiting his Habdone and walking to the mess hall for some food, all of a sudden he notices something very strange, and this sets off his alarms in his head. The artillery has stopped. They stopped firing. And he's confused by this because he was told that they were going to be shelling all day today. So, looking around, he finds out why they stopped artillerying all day today. The colonel sends a messenger, and Commissar Cain doesn't even need to look at the messenger to tell who it is. The smell far, far surpassed the messenger in the sense of who it was. It was, of course, Gunner Jurgen. And Gunner Jurgen tells him that they're being pulled from the front lines. They're being pulled away to another planet. This is, of course, great news for some, bad news for Cain. Cain, in particular, is being asked to go to Colonel Mostrow's residence and talk about the situation, why it is indeed that they're being pulled. Now, Cain has to keep up appearances, though, and act like as if, he's just as happy as everyone else that they can finally do some God Emperor's work instead of sitting on this shitty mining world. So he puts on a fake smile and goes, great. About time we get moving, guys. And heads to Colonel Mostrow with haste. Upon entering Colonel Mostrow's residence, he finds out why and where they are going. It turns out the armored division had squashed the orc remnants to paste, and within the night, they should be all done wrapping up. No orcs left on the planet. This is, of course, a tribute to the Valhallans being great shock troopers when it comes to fighting orcs. That's their main specialty, after all. But it's also fascinating to Ciaphas Cain because here they are on a world that is the complete opposite of what the Valhallans are used to. And yet, they performed remarkably well. In just a few weeks, a month, they squashed the enemy to pieces where it should have taken maybe 6 months, maybe more. So this is a very great achievement by the Valhallans, and this is more or less a disappointment to Cain. But Cain asks the question, where are they going? First, the colonel is a little annoyed being interrupted by Cain, and he gives him a bit of a stare that Cain knows is more or less a stare of disappointment, a stare of anger. But the colonel says, well, first we're going to the landing pad. Da-da, dumb. But there he should be going to Kefia. And Kefia is an agriculture world. And as far as the colonel knows, there's been a rebellion on that world that needs to be quashed. After all, agri-worlds provide a huge amount of food for the Imperium, so it's very important not to lose them. And, of course, you can't virus bomb the planet unless it's absolutely needed, or else the planet's useless. It can no longer perform its function. Now, the fleet that's coming to pick them up should be arriving in a day or two, but the fleet is around 1,000 ships strong. This fleet is pretty damn formidable. We're talking huge. This is not a normal incursion. You see, while Ciaphas Cain was in the Scala and the Commissariat, he was wooing with this lady who just so happened to be in the know-how. She was a quote-unquote friend that knew exactly what was going on, but didn't know the inner workings of what was going on, if you catch my drift. So she knew vaguely what was happening, a little bit more than your average citizenry. And what she told Ciaphas Cain is that it's not a rebellion that the Commissariat would have you believe. It is actually gene stealers. Da-na-na. This is not good. And this is, of course, something that is extremely scary. Upon which, Cain tells the colonel that, hey, from what I've heard in the Commissariat, this is actually gene stealers at work, not a rebellion. Now, the reason why the colonel would be most surprised and most scared by this proposition is that gene stealers are Tyranids. And if there are Tyranids, then that means that the entire world needs to be purged. The entire world. Every inch, every molecule in the air needs to be cleansed. Not necessarily exterminatus, because again, an agriculture world is valuable. So they can do it exactly like that. So this is going to make the battle even tougher. This, of course, is what Cain notices. But Cain is also pretty excited because then that means it's going to be a slow campaign. it's going to be a campaign that could take years. And it's going to be a campaign that he will be sitting comfortably, quietly in the artillery line, while everyone else is out in the front lines engaging these massive hordes of gene stealers, Tyranids, whatever the fuck monstrosities they can create. Again, not his problem, but he's pretty excited nonetheless. Now, bit of an issue though. This is the part that's a little bit more eye-catching. Is that the fleet of 1,000 ships, the colonel is asked by Cain, oh, so have your astropaths like talked to the fleet? Have they seen how long they are from us? And the astropath tells Cain they don't know where the fleet is. They lost communication with it. This sends shivers down Cain's spine. And this is where we see the survival instinct of a rat is a lot greater than the charging zeal of an orc. You see, Cain knows what this means. There is no feasible way an astropath would just lose an entire fleet of 1,000 ships. That's not possible unless there is something blocking the field. And if it's blocking the field and the fleet was only a day away, that means that whatever is going to come is going to be basically on top of their ass within that day. So, Cain being one of the more quick decision makers, he immediately tells the colonel to rescind the orders he's just given. Because the colonel just ordered everyone to pack up, disassemble the equipment, and get ready to go home. Get ready to get aboard a ship. Cain is telling him, do not follow that order. Cancel that order. Keep the guns ready. Keep the guns loaded. Keep the hydras pointing at the sky. This, of course, the colonel is like, are you making jokes? Because I didn't say anything fucking funny. To which Cain goes, no, we are not in a laughing matter. We're in serious shit. Because if there is a field blocking the fleet, and that field is closer to us than the fleet is, guess what that means? The Tyranids won. The small splinter fleet from McCrag that they blew up is probably here, and it's probably here in mass. They've probably grown to a big enough number to where they can devour this world in less than a day. So, the colonel realizes this and goes, oh shit. Get all the guns up. Face the hydras up to the sky. Fuck the port. Don't let anything leave. We're not going to do this shit. We are going to fight to every last man, woman, and child. Now, funny enough, Cain decides to talk to an ore barge, basically a ship that's meant for ferrying large amounts of ore to and from the planet. He's talking to the captain and requisitions the ship for the commissariat, to which the colonel just so happened to be nearby and goes, are you planning on hitching a ride on this thing and leaving us for dust? Upon which Commissar Cain blatantly admits, yep, that is exactly what I was thinking, was getting on this goddamn ore barge and making a fucking run for it while there's still time. But, unfortunately for them, a bunch of warp portals occur, and out comes the Tyranid ships. Ooh, yeah. And Cain immediately pulls up a tactical display and sighs with a huge breath of relief that thankfully he's been right about everything all along. Not only were they Tyranids, not only were his forces still up and ready for combat because he told them to, but more importantly, the Tyranids were going for the largest amount of biomass on the planet. And upon which, that would be the front lines where they've been battling orcs this whole time. This gives Cain a huge sigh of relief, because then that means that he's got more time to figure out a way to escape the planet. Funny enough, with all the Tyranid spores descending on the planet, the colonel makes a note that, hey, with all these things in the air, our surveillance equipment's going to be useless, so good job securing this barge here, because we could use it as a surveillance tool to scan the orbit, scan the atmosphere, and see where these Tyranids are going to be going next. Upon which Cain goes, yeah, exactly what I was planning, but also evacuation. See, Cain's trying to weasel in this notion of evac into the colonel's head, but the colonel's still a little staunch against that and goes, Evacuate who exactly? And he gives Cain this suspicious stink eye and goes, who exactly are we evacuating, Commissar? Tell me that. Who are we evacuating? Upon which Cain points at the mountain full of mining tunnels and the miner gear and miner tools and says, well, obviously, the people. God Emperor needs more people, and it is our duty to protect them. So if worse comes to worse, they should be the ones to evacuate. Of course, Cain just thinks in his head, fuck, fuck, fuck. The colonel caught me. Now I have to evacuate these people. Well, hopefully when the evacuation starts, the colonel's not around so I could incidentally get evacuated with the people. Until then, of course, Commissar Cain's issuing out orders. He's telling the gunners, he's telling the subordinates what to do, to prepare for evac, to prepare to fight to the death. He is telling them about how great of a service they're doing, and the colonel is actually surprised by this. Here's this friendly, charming commissar. All of a sudden, now he's got this stern look about him, giving orders. He is being a fine commissar indeed. He is rallying the troops. Every man right now is so well bolstered, they're willing to charge at a goddamn Carnifex with nothing more than a chair leg. They are ready for a fight. Upon which the colonel says to the commissar, is it really as bad as you're saying it, or is it worse than what you're not saying? Upon which Cain full on admits, yeah, it is actually way worse, because it's going to take us a day to evacuate everybody, and pulls up the tactical display and shows the colonel, we do not have a day. The main force is engaging the Tyranids right now. The Earthshaker rounds are once again thrumming and drilling into the planet, just blowing away any Tyranids that land on the surface. And the colonel can read the tactical log just as good as Cain can, because he goes, the main force isn't going to hold out. And once the main force is done, the colony is the next target. But Cain points out, too, they don't necessarily need to wait for the main force to die. They just need to wait for when the Tyranids spot the colony. Because once they spot the colony, they don't give a fuck about the main force. They're going to go straight for the colony. Easy food. Easy biomass. But the main force might not hold out that long for the Tyranids to spot the colony, as they're both pointing out. So we have two tactical issues already. Also, to evacuate a colony in a day when you don't even have 24 hours, that's not a good issue either. There is a lot of issues cropping up right now, and none of it is looking good. Of course, Cain speaking so plainly and so openly to the colonel in such a believable fashion, the colonel is surprised. He actually shakes Cain's hand and calls him a great man, a really good officer, just the best commissar he's ever seen. To which Cain even monologues in his own head and says, well, you, Colonel, are a bad judge of character. But that is okay, because I have more pressing issues to worry about, like how the fuck to get out of this goddamn colony. After a few hours of waiting, after all, Cain pretty much set everything in motion. All he's got to do is wait. He sees that the evacuation's going as planned, and he asks the gunner in charge, the soldier in charge, hey, how's the evacuation going? And the gunner just flat out tells him slower than expected. It's going pretty damn slow. Cain tries to bolster the troops' morale and just lies to him flat out and says, oh, this is much faster than I expected. Reality is he's looking at the data and going, oh, this is a pretty sloppy evacuation. I could probably sneak aboard and no one would fucking notice. Now, the main forces that are fighting the Tyranids are actually not dead yet, and this is something that's actually very important to note, is that Valhallans are very well known for their infantry blob tactics with artillery support. This is perfect for them. This is the perfect environment for them. Here they are, jam-packed together against hordes and hordes and hordes of monstrosities with artillery support. This is great. They've actually held on for hours now. It's already nighttime. It's nightfall. So they've been holding from probably midday to midnight, and they've already held sufficiently. They've even gained ground in certain areas. But the issue is, as Cain notes, is that this is endless waves of Tyranids. At some point, something's got to give. Unstoppable force versus an unmovable object, something's going to break. And Cain is not betting his money on the unstoppable force breaking. No. He knows the Valhallans are doomed. The colonel, on the other hand, takes his time to appreciate everything the commissar's done, because if it wasn't for his warning, they would have been dead by this time, because they would have had their guns unpacked, their main force wouldn't have been ready, they would have been just lounging around away from the barracks, away from their guns. This would have been impossible to defend if that was the situation. But Cain, already making his excuses out there, just says, oh, you guys would have fared great without me. You guys give me too much credit. I'm going to go outside and bolster the troops because there's really nothing for me to do here. The colonel just nods him off and says, yep, do what you gotta do. I'm the real fucking current commander here, so this is my job anyways, to lead from the tactical point. So, Cain decides to take a stroll around the command post, the command compound, and something really, really bad happens. Something incredibly bad happens. In the nighttime on this cold desert planet, it is near freezing temperatures, which is fine for the Valhallans. They actually look comfortable for once instead of sweating their asses off being half naked all the time. Cain's just walking around making a few jokes with them, easing the tension, boosting some confidence, doing his thing, and walking without any specific location in mind. He just so happens to stumble in the vehicle parking space. And he's almost within reach of a salamander when all of a sudden he hears someone yell, "They're here!" There is some terrible going on right now, which is air units of Tyranids are descending upon the base. Gargoyles, they're called. And Cain whips out his bolter, whips out his chainsword, and immediately just starts flailing in the air, hoping to hit something, but mostly get the fuck out of danger. Cain, being the heroic commissar that he always is and always shall be, he basically is running through the base, going to the vehicle parking zone, waving his chainsword wildly in the fucking air and blasting his las pistol aimlessly into the sky. Now, him screaming and running apparently inspired a lot of the men as they just started hunkering down, tracking targets, blasting them out of the sky, just following Cain's example as he valiantly, cowardly charges to an abandoned salamander that is just sitting there, unmanned, in the parking zone, ready to get the fuck out of here. Now, unfortunately for him, he seems to have tripped on something and is now on the ground eating shit. And before he can get up, someone in particular that he tripped on was about to crash his skull in. Cain immediately reassures the person, Jurgen, of course, you could always identify him by the smell, that it is him. Now, Jurgen is not that intelligent, as I said, and he is just asking his commissar, what the fuck should we do? This is insane. We're being swarmed out here. To which the commissar very courageously tells him, get the fucking vehicle started. We are getting the hell out of here. Which is amazing that Jurgen even didn't question it. He just hopped right in, started the vehicle, and off they went. Cain, of course, takes up the bolter gun that's sitting on top, spraying hot lead down whatever Tyranids may descend from the sky, and tells Jurgen to drive west towards the mines. Jurgen just complies, and Cain even notes that's fucking damn lucky of him, because if Jurgen didn't comply and just asked him why to the mines, why are they going to the mines, he would have been more or less blamed on heresy, just blasphemy that he's actually trying to abandon his post and evacuate with the people. Unfortunately for them, as they are driving to the mines west, they come across something very, very terrible indeed. Something that is not good at all. You see, they didn't get within a few moments away from the command post, and already they ran across another Tyranid force. This time it's the main force. This, of course, surprises Jurgen, and he just asks the commissar what should they do while he's still driving into the main force of Tyranids. Of course, commissar, having a brain, tells him, well, first thing, Jurgen, we're going to do is stop the fucking car. Because if you're heading towards the cliff, the one thing you don't do is just keep fucking going. And next thing you're going to do is put this goddamn thing in fucking reverse and get us the hell back to the command post. So, Jurgen complies and does so rather swiftly. So swiftly that the commissar flies down off of the gun and cracks his head against the Voxcaster, which he realizes, oh, this thing fucking works. Let me call Colonel Mostrow. So he calls up Colonel Mostrow, and Colonel Mostrow just blatantly tells him, you're alive. You know, when we saw you flee, we weren't expecting to hear from you again. After all, deserters usually don't talk to the units that they just left. Upon which, Cain reaffirms him, no, that was a diversion, luring the Tyranids away. But you gotta face your fucking guns to the west, because this is where the real Tyranid force is. After all, Tyranids are known for flanking. The Tyranid forces are right behind my ass. To which the colonel goes, wait, what? You're serious, right? I don't see any red dots on my map here. What are you talking about? And he just yells at him, Colonel, just fucking do it, and hangs up. Upon which he takes up the gun again and just starts blasting into the Tyranid horde. The Tyranid horde, of course, that's on the ground, is just massive. And Cain just kind of aims at whatever's the largest shadow, just blast it. He doesn't know if he killed anything, he doesn't know if he actually hit anything. He just knows is that this vehicle needs to keep up speed. Because right now, they are on their ass. They are way, way up their ass. So far up their ass that the fumes coming out of the exhaust port is going straight into a Tyranid's nostrils. It's not going into the air. It's not going into your ozone layer. It's going straight into these Tyranids. Because they are up the salamander's ass. Finally, they get in sight of the command post. Huzzah! The colonel actually listened to him. For now, the Hydra's quad barrels are facing downrange, ready to blast these Xenoscum to fucking high hell. Problem, yet again, Jurgen had pushed the salamander vehicle too hard, and the engine is dead. This is not good. Jurgen promptly asks the Commissar for guidance and goes, what should we do? Well, Commissar Cain decides to demonstrate to him what it is that they should do. Run. Just fucking run. Now, as Cain is running, he can hear the shuffling steps, the thudding of Jurgen as he's not able to keep up. He's a little slower, and he's a lot shorter. So, to which he's asking Commissar, wait for me! Hold up! I'm trying to get to you! To which the Commissar promptly does not turn his head. He doesn't look back. He is just going, gotta be faster than Jurgen, just gotta be faster than Jurgen, gotta be faster than Jurgen. Upon which he actually hears some that answered his prayers. Jurgen has stumbled and fallen on the ground, screaming for help. They're gonna eat me! Commissar, help! And all the Commissar can think of is, thank God, something's gonna slow them down, because I can't keep running like this forever. But before he can get to the command post, unfortunately, a hive tyrant cuts off Commissar Cain, gets right in between him and the command post. Judging by his odds, a hive tyrant is nothing you want to engage in melee combat with. He looks back at Jurgen. Jurgen is surrounded by Hormagaunts, and Hormagaunts you stand a significantly better chance against in melee combat than a fucking hive tyrant. So he promptly sprints back to Jurgen, takes a swipe of his chainsword, cleaving the fucker in two who is about to eat Jurgen. Jurgen gets back up on his feet and just starts blasting off the Tyranids as they form a little circle. Nowhere else to run, nowhere else to go. This is all that Commissar Cain can think of is, holy shit, I am about to die. But luck would have it, boom! The Hydras just start laying fucking hot lead, blasting the Hive Tyrant to pieces, blasting all the Tyranids to pieces, and Cain and Jurgen laying on the ground, reluctant, excited. Jurgen is just hugging the shit out of Commissar. We did it! We fucking did it! And Colonel Mostrow on top of his Hydra comes over and says, good job, hero. Hero of the Imperium, Ciaphas Cain. The way you went out on a scouting mission by yourself and discovered the enemy's force and then lured them back here and got us to just blow them away with your excellent diversion, and then you even went back to save Jurgen. You're just the greatest hero the Imperium's ever had. The Imperium needs more men like you. To which Commissar Cain just nods and goes, that is exactly what I was doing, sir. That was exactly it. And the colonel says, you know, with your status as a hero in the regiment, you need a personal escort, a personal bodyguard with you at all times. You know who I'm going to appoint to that duty? Commissar Cain's nose snickers. The very stratospheres of his nasal canals already just bucking with excitement. Gunner Jurgen is going to be your personal guard from here on out. Who else to defend you with his life than the man who you just saved? Colonel Jurgen, the smelliest guy in the regiment. Here we go. With that being said, this has been Chapter 1 of Ciaphas Cain. I hope you guys enjoyed. And, of course, we will be continuing onwards for the next chapter. The next chapter is also titled Chapter 1, but is a Chapter 1 of a much larger story. And we will dive into that later. But besides that, this has been Free 700. I am out. I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, see you guys next time.